Hi, everybody. My name's Johnny, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Johnny. I have to ask this question. Is anybody here from Auburn? I just thought I'd ask. If you are, you're welcome to Auburn. I want to thank Kathy and Greg for extending the privilege of me participating in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It's my opinion, and I hope it always remains such, that it's some type of a privilege to be allowed to come and sit in these rooms. I have never been able to get through my sick head that I have a right to everything that goes on in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I was lucky enough to stumble in here and get sober and stay that way. And the reason I tell you that is that everything that's good and decent in my life is the byproduct of the God I discovered sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'm extremely pleased to be here tonight, fully clothed and in my right mind. It hasn't always been that way. It seems like maybe only yesterday, but it was a long time ago, that I came to in a cell in solitary confinement in a maximum security penitentiary, drifting in and out of total insanity. And because of a loving God who has expressed himself through our program, it's no longer necessary for me to crawl around on my hands and knees like an animal. If I don't get nothing else out of this at all, I guess I can live with that all the way to the car tonight. Makes me feel good. Now I'd like to be able to stand here tonight without any type of doubt and just to create a little rough spot for some of the purist. I'd like to stand here and tell you that's where alcohol took me to. Nope, it's where I took me to. The only thing that alcohol ever did in my life, it kept me alive long enough to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm as sure as I'm standing here, if I hadn't taken a drink of alcohol, well, number one, if I hadn't taken a drink, I couldn't be an alcoholic, period. Alcohol don't cause alcoholism, but you can't be alcoholic if you haven't drank. I hate to confuse you who think you're alcoholic who haven't drank yet, but we're trying to raise the bottom so high, we're trying to get people in here who don't drink, for Christ's sake. And the thing that brings Alcoholics Anonymous together and alcoholics together, in my opinion, is identification. You got to identify. And it's not a head-to-head trip. It's a heart-to-heart trip. I grew up knowing an awful lot about whiskey because everybody in my family drank whiskey. They were Irish. They had no religion to hold their guilt down, so they just went crazy, them people. They crazy people. They lived in penitentiaries and they worked in whorehouses. They made whiskey. They sold whiskey. And on Saturday night, this is Saturday night, huh?
Yes, it is.
Saturday night, they got together and beat the hell out of one another. That's what they did. I mean, they had no religion to hold their guilt down, so they just went crazy. I didn't ever feel bad about that, or I didn't think that scarred me on the therapist's couch later on in life. I just thought that was what was going on because everybody else was doing it where I lived, and it was all the same thing. But way down deep inside of me was this longing for something better than that. I've always had this thing that seemed like to me that I was born without, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't have it. And I knew that I'm going to have to find it or something tragic's going to happen to me. I wasn't worried about drinking. I wasn't worried about all this other kind of stuff. I was just worried about how I felt and how I thought. And I looked up one day, I saw my grandmother. You know, my grandmother lived till she was 90 years old. She never took a drink of alcohol or smoked a cigarette in her life. My grandmother wouldn't think it's a big deal. I've been sober over half a century. Big deal, she'd say. I ain't had a drink for 90. Took a look at her, so you ought to have had a couple, Granny, make you feel better from time to time. My grandmother got everything she needed out of the church that she went to. I used to watch her on Sunday morning. She'd get up on Sunday morning. Her house had been a war zone for them crazy people the night before. She'd step over them, put on the best thing she had, and she disappeared for a couple hours. And when she came back, something had happened to her. I could see it just as clear as I can see you. She was a little lighter in her step, a little easier being. She kind of danced around these people and cleaned them up and sang songs to Jesus. And I took a look at that, and I filed that in my keen alcoholic mind. Now, for you who are new, this is probably the only place in the world you're ever going to hear about the keen alcoholic mind. You don't go to Al-Anon and hear about it. You ask us a question, we'll give you an answer. We don't even know what the hell we're talking about. We'll give you an answer about something. We've got minds like steel traps. Nothing catches in there, nothing stays in there. But I had this idea because, see, I don't know any better, and I hadn't been here yet. I get this idea in my head, like a lot of people have today, that all I'm going to have to do is go where my grandma goes and do what my grandma does. I'd be like my grandma. What I didn't know was I'm not like my grandmother. My grandmother's not alcoholic. I didn't know that. So as a little child, I put my hand in my grandmother's hand and went and sat in my grandmother's church with my grandmother and waited for this big thing to happen to me that was happening to her. And I don't remember any of it happening. I don't remember anything about it at all. I just remember that nothing happened to me. So I asked my grandmother questions. I said to my grandmother, Grandma, when am I going to get it? Because I want it. She said, when you go down front? Well, I went down front. And I don't remember nothing happening down there either. Then I asked her again, and she said, well, when the preacher sprinkles you. I went down there and got sprinkled, and I don't remember anything about that either. But what I've come to understand since I've been here is that there was nothing wrong with my grandmother's church. There's something wrong with the jackass sitting in it, me. See, what I'm doing there, unbeknownst to me, and same thing I've done all my life, probably even a little bit today, I'm looking for something way out here to make me feel better in here, which only goes to prove to me that the problem has always been there. And one day, I sit on the back porch of my grandfather's house, and I watched my grandfather drink whiskey out of a fruit jar. He put it down and he went somewhere, and I picked it up and took a drink of it. And I guess, according to my book, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is really the only authority in Alcoholics Anonymous, the next couple of minutes of my life is what makes me an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic because I spent the next 20 years of my life creating mayhem out in the world. I'm an alcoholic because I have some type of an abnormal reaction to alcohol. Now, everybody who drinks it doesn't get it. I'm sorry. Bill writes about it in our book. It's not a bad reaction, if you want to know the truth. If it had been a bad reaction, you'd probably have another speaker up here tonight. It's a good reaction. I pursued it into the gates of insanity and death, so it damn sure wasn't bad. But what happened to me, I wasn't ready for next. It only happens to alcoholics of my type. See, once I put alcohol into my system, then and only then do I drink to overcome a craving that's beyond all human understanding and beyond all human help. I didn't know that. So what happened to me that day was 3 days later, where they pulled me out from underneath a bridge and stood me in front of a judge and sentenced me to the Hutchinson State Reform School. 20 years later, I took a drink of alcohol. They pulled me out of a car in Compton and stood me in front of a judge and sentenced me to 20 years in the penitentiary. Now, that's what happened to me when I drank. I got drunk and went places, just traveled around. I went from reform school to junior penitentiaries to nut houses. Now they call them treatment centers. I like nut house a little better, if you want to know the truth. It's a little more macho. I always figured if you're going to be bad, you ought to be bad. I don't think you ought to quit drinking because you puke a little. Hang in there. Give it everything you got. Alcoholics Anonymous works a hell of a lot better when you run out of options. I gave it everything I had out there. I threw everything into the battle, lost the battle. And I didn't even know what I was fighting. I walked out of institution from the time I was a little fella till I was full grown. Every time I walked out of there, I'm as physically sober as I am this moment. Not one time did I say to myself, Self, do you realize how long it's been since you've had Sears those electroshock treatments? Why don't you have a drink? Why don't you have a drink of alcohol and go out there and join those gangs and stand on them street corners and commit those atrocities? Why don't you have a drink of alcohol and go out there and tear your mother's heart out one more time? Why don't you have a drink of alcohol and go out and become responsible for the death of your 17-year-old brother? Why don't you do that? No. You see, I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics of my type, and the book describes them in here, do not drink after being sober for a period of time to get drunk. The alcoholics don't want to be drunk. We just want to be there. But you see, once I succumb to the desire and put alcohol into my system, I'm powerless not to take the next drink, and the next drink, and the next drink, and the next drink. And the only thing right up to this moment that has ever stopped me from drinking is a straitjacket or a set of handcuffs. I don't stop drinking. I just don't. I have never stopped. And if I lived till November the 4th, it'd be 53 years since I've had any type of mood-altering chemical in my system whatsoever. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Left my own desire, I'd been dead 53 years ago. There I sit. I don't know what's going on in this thing called life. I haven't got a clue. I sit down across the desk from these therapists and these psychiatrists. They're looking at me. They told me this when I was a kid in juvenile hall. They told me this when I was in Folsom State Penitentiary. They told me that in San Quentin State Penitentiary. They told me that in county jails and youth authority. You know what they said to me in my initial interview? If you didn't drink these things and swallow these things and smoke these things and shoot these things, you wouldn't have any problem. And what none of those people ever seemed to understand is every time they told me that I was as physically sober as I am right now, many times I wanted to scream out, "Good God, doctor, don't you understand?" Because you don't. See, if you're not alcoholic, you'll never understand why I drink. But if you're not alcoholic, I'll never understand why you don't. You ever listen to some of that nonsense? Oh, no thanks, I'm starting to feel it. My older brother told me that one time. I got to go home. It's Friday. I just got paid. What? He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to Mexico." He said, "You don't have a car." I said, "I'm still going to Mexico. I got to go." So I don't know what's going on with these people. I haven't got a clue what's going on with these people. I'm on a street corner, a fellow from a reform school. I'm 10 or 11 years old. I'm drinking a bottle of cheap Marca Petri red wine. Most of you have never heard of Marca Petri red wine. I can tell. It was the experimental stage of Thunderbird. That's why you never heard of it. I'll tell you how bad it was. It'd hang you without a rope. You didn't have to worry about it. And I'm drinking this stuff, and I'm sitting around my little gang, and we're all acting tough and staying tough. We had hats. We probably had them on backwards or crossways or some damn thing, keep our images going. And a guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You ought to try these." He gave me some pills. I don't remember saying to him, "What are those? Will they bother me?" Thank God they weren't X-Lax. That's all I can say. Probably have whole new discussions in these adjustment attitude meetings in the morning. Let me tell you, I'm an alcoholic and a laxative taker. Let me tell you about my story. No thanks, I just had breakfast. Why is stuff stupider than that in the AA meeting? It just works, all I can tell you, because a couple of years later, I stood on that same street corner, a guy stuck a needle in my arm. And for the next 14 years of my life, I stuck needles in my arm in and out of institutions. That's what I do. I live out in the streets, and I do what people like me who live in the streets do. I destroy every single thing that comes in contact with me. I'm like a plague. There's a reason for that, you see. I'm a taker. I'm a taker of things and a user of people, so therefore I'm a loser. I'm selfish, self-centered, self-serving, got an ego bigger than this whole building. My entire lifetime was spent before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, for a long time after I was here, and maybe even a great deal of time today. I don't have a handle on it, without a conscious thought or a conscious concern for any other human being who lives upon the face of this earth. I'm not interested in you at all, unless you've got something I want. Then when I get it, I cash it aside like so much trash and I go on about my business. That's the way I live my life. Well, I can live my life like that one day or 1 week until the heat got on. I lived my life like that from my earliest recollection of life until a long time after I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And at the ripe old age of 24, 25 years old, somewhere around there, I came to in that cell in solitary confinement in maximum security penitentiary. What's significant about that to me today is that day there wasn't a single solitary soul left upon the face of this earth that would send me a penny postcard. They were all gone. But you know what? They should be gone. I don't have any right to have any of it back, anything good and decent in my life just because I got sober here. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to give any of it back, but I don't have a right to it. But I'll take it. I was doing the same thing in that cell in solitary confinement in that penitentiary I was doing at my grandmother's knee and didn't know it. I'm still looking for a way out of this dilemma that I'm in, but I don't know what's wrong with me. It's hard to seek the answer to a problem if you don't know what your problem is, and I ain't got a clue. But that's what stumbled into your meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. On the 4th day of November, 1959, I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was very nearly my last meeting because I stumbled in and sit down in this room, in the back row, of course, and I looked up on the wall and I saw 2 big A's. I thought it was some type of an anti-aircraft brigade. I didn't know what I was in, for God's sake. I said to this clown sitting next to me, "What is this?" He said, "It's Alcoholics Anonymous." I sunk down in my seat. I didn't want to see the big gangster hanging out with these winos. I've got a big-time reputation I'm trying to pretend to correct. It's killing me, but I'm going to live by it. And it was always my last meeting. Do people talk to me about being sober? And I thought Alcoholics Anonymous had nothing to offer me because I was sober. But I was trapped by the people. I couldn't figure them out. You know what these goofy people did? This was a long time before there was any money in the treatment of alcoholism, before the American Medical Association decided they could make money off of it. People had to buy their own gasoline. They had to buy their own car. They drove 100 miles up old back roads on Sunday morning, and they spent 2 hours talking to a room full of people who didn't want to listen to them. People like me who sat in the back row and made fun of them. It took me a long time to realize how very sick that was. Here I am sitting in the penitentiary. I don't know when I'm going home, and I'm making fun of people who are leaving in an hour. There's something wrong with that. I don't know. See, I don't know what's wrong with me. So it's kind of hard to seek this answer if you don't know what your problem is. Nobody had ever told me anything about this. They told me a lot of things. Judge called me a blood-sucking parasite in society one time. So it was of his right I'd never be allowed to be around decent people again. He didn't say anything I didn't know. See, I've always known about me. Always. I've always known what kind of a thing I was, what kind of a rock I crawled out from underneath. I always knew what I did, but I did it anyhow because I was powerless not to do it, because I'm caught up in this whirlwind of alcohol and drugs and gangs and all this nonsense and these images that I had created, trying to prove to people I wasn't scared to death. And so I know that when the judge called me a blood-sucking parasite in society, and my brain kind of exploded. So that's when I ended up in that cell. And so I'm sitting in these meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm watching these people. I don't understand. I kept coming back to their meetings. And what you proved to me when I was new, that I was not alcoholic. You would get up at podium like this, people would, and they say things like, I used to drink, now I don't drink anymore, and everything is just wonderful. Now back there where I'm sitting in Inventory Point, I'm saying to myself, I guess I'm not alcoholic then. If I was alcoholic, then all I'd have to do is not drink, and I'd be okay. But there's something far more wrong with me than that. I knew that, and I hadn't even looked in the book yet. See, unbeknownst to me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to equate a problem with alcohol in a deadly, serious, spiritual malady called alcoholism. That's what the book calls it. The book don't call it a disease. The disease, you take a pill, get over it. Nowhere in my book does it mention that I have a disease if I'm alcoholic. It says I have an illness of a spiritual nature. If I have an illness of a spiritual nature, wouldn't I need a spiritual solution? See, that's what alcohol does for the alcoholic. It is a spirit. I don't know when the last time you ever looked at a bottle of whiskey, but it says spirit on it.
That's right.
First drink I ever had was a spiritual experience. And I pursued that delusion into the gates of insanity and death and beyond. It frightens me sometimes to think, sitting in that meeting that day in November 1959, that I was staring at an answer that I had sold my soul for. See, I don't recognize the answer because I don't know what the problem is. Over and over and over again, if you don't know what your problem is, you can't find any solution to it. I kept coming back to your meetings. I'd sit back there and make fun of you, whatever, personify my differences, create my differences, because I was an alcoholic. I wasn't even an alcoholic. I was just a bunch of andas crying in there somewhere. Because I didn't know what an alcoholic was. One day a man wandered into this meeting that I knew had done 23 flat years in the penitentiary. He stood at a podium of Alcoholics Anonymous very much like this. He told me something that all the great therapists and psychiatrists and sociologists and criminologists didn't know that the state of California had. He looked down where I was sitting and he said, you don't have to live like this no more if you don't want to. You don't have to do it like this no more. Nobody ever said to me that to me. They said, don't drink. You'll be fine, don't drink. If I could have got out of my straitjacket, I'd have got him. After the meeting, I went up to him and I said something to him. I guess it's one of those kind of things where I did something, I don't know. I said, how do you learn how to live? I'm not interested in being sober from that day to this day and living this good life that I have, not at all. I'm looking for a way to lay down and sleep all night long. That's what I want, without some type of high-powered sedative in my system. You see, what happens to me about no system, nothing in my system, what happens to me is about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up in cold sweats. I got nightmares that are waking me up and driving me crazy. I'm up to 2 detectives underneath the gravesite where they bury my baby brother. I'm looking into my mother's eyes when she screamed at me through the video screen that I was a murderer. Look what you've done now, scum. You've killed our baby. And the countless thousands of nameless faces that I had destroyed on my selfish, self-centered walk through life. That's what happens to me when I don't have anything in my system. Exactly. And I don't know what to do. He gave me an answer that's seemingly almost lost in this psychobabblers being infiltrated in here at Alcoholics Anonymous. Said there was a book called Alcoholics Anonymous in the library. If I'd go get it, he'd go home and pray that I'd find some part of me in it. I went over to the prison library the next day and stole the book Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I got a big-time gangster image. I don't want anybody seeing my name alongside of anything as lame as Alcoholics Anonymous. But I opened the book. I didn't open the book to get sober and stay sober and have this good life. I opened the book of Alcoholics Anonymous with the Losers theme song in my head. I'm going to read your book, and I'm going to prove to you my case is different. That won't work for me. The Losers theme song in Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't understand. My case is different. When I'm sponsoring guys and they start talking that different crap to me, I start speaking Mexican to them. Adios. You're sitting in this room, you think your case is different? Hasta la vista, baby. You won't be here much longer either. But I don't judge, I just report the facts to you. My eyes fell upon a phrase that kind of captured me as I was reading into the third chapter of our book, and the doctor's opinion. The phrase was called the phenomenon of craving. I kind of held, I don't know if you've ever read anything that kind of grips you. So I started to read this thing, see this thing, and I started to go back and look at my life. And I'm trying to figure out all these things in life that were offered to me. I somehow or other was gifted with a body that was capable of playing Major League Baseball. When I was in a reform school in San Fernando Valley, I was offered a scholarship to play baseball for a major university. 1951, in San Quentin State Penitentiary, I was offered a contract to play baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals. But you see, my sick head said the reason none of that came about was where I came from. These people I came from, these gangs I ran with in juvenile hall, all this nonsense that I did, that's the reason I didn't do it. My drunken parents, blah, 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 went on. And what I've come to understand was that the reason none of this things have to happen to me was I just took a drink. Just took a drink. But you see, then the drink took a drink. Then the drink took a drink. And then the drink took me. Story of my life. That's what an alcoholic is. An alcoholic's not somebody who sits around and thinks they're one. An alcoholic is somebody who practices this illness called alcoholism. Right then and there I did something I did this morning that I've done every day for over half a century of my life. I assume the responsibility for my own actions. I'm responsible for everything that happens to me, good, bad, or indifferent. Alcohol, not responsible for what happened to me. I can't blame alcohol. I can't blame my parents. I can't blame God. I can't blame anything. I'm the guy that did the deal. And I live to pay the price for it. I can't even take any credit for coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, for God's sake. If I'd have known where I was coming that day, I wouldn't have come. If you put a lie detector test on my arm, are you alcoholic? I'd have said, no, I'm not. If you'd accused me of one, I'd have hit you. I don't know about these kind of things. I only know that shortly thereafter that I walked out of a man's office where I'd spent 3.5 hours telling him about every rotten, filthy, corrupt thing I'd ever done. I told that man things that day that would have kept me in the penitentiary for the rest of my natural life. You know why? The book says it. The only authority here, the book says that I got to be searching, fearless, and thorough, because I'm trying to build an ark where I can walk a free man. And I've never met an alcoholic in my life who didn't want to be free. And the book says freedom from the bondage of self. It also says that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems. If I don't get rid of it, it's going to kill me. First, I got to uncover, discover, and discard what's wrong with me. I got to discover what's wrong with me. And I discovered sitting in that room in that man's office that day, somewhere along the line, I heard myself say to him that I was an alcoholic because I had the evidence in front of me. And from that moment to this, I have never had any doubt about what's wrong with me. I'm an alcoholic, and I suffer from this illness called alcoholism. And my solution is Alcoholics Anonymous. Has been for almost 53 years now. And I don't know anybody who lives any better than me. Almost 51 years ago, they opened up the doors of the penitentiary and turned me loose. I had papers in that thing from psychiatrists and sociologists says I'd never be able to live outside of an institution without some type of medication in my system. I haven't taken anything in my system strong, done an aspirin for almost 53 years. Now, those psychiatrists have been dead a long time. I was introduced to a world when I walked out of the penitentiary I didn't know anything about. I'd never been out there gone to work. I never had a job. I never wrote a check. I never paid taxes. I didn't do anything. I'm a thief. I took what I wanted from anybody, not just mommy and daddy. I took it from everybody. My mom didn't have anything for me to steal from, so that made it nice. I just steal from everybody. I just took anything I wanted from anybody I wanted. It's the way I live my life. Somewhere in this 19 months that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous in this penitentiary, a dream came to me that maybe someday you'd let me come and sit with you. I never dreamed you'd ever ask me to do anything here. I didn't want to do anything. I always wanted to come and sit. I knew I was safe here. But I said to myself, if they give me the privilege of coming sitting in the meetings, I'll do anything they ask me to do. I'm very pleased tonight to be able to tell you that for almost 51 years of my life, I've done just about everything that Alcoholics Anonymous has asked me to do. And I don't even know anybody who lives any better than I do. Oh, I know people who got more things than I have. Don't mean nothing. I'm talking about laying down all night and sleeping all night. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about walking around in a world that I don't belong into, wanting nothing for myself whatsoever. I'm talking about most of my life losing some peaceful coexistence with this God I discovered sitting in these meetings. I'm talking about a peacefulness and a joyness that I never dreamed existed prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what's here. This is a program of recovery for people who suffer from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. This is a program for alcoholics. They have 12-step programs for everybody else. But the main purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous is to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. It also says we'll try to practice these principles in all our affairs. I'm a very simple man. I don't get up and go through a bunch of rigmarole in the morning. I get up and read a non-approved 24-hour day book. Say a few words to this God. As I get ready to leave my house every morning to go to work, because I have to work, I look in the mirror, and I look at that mirror, and I say something that my papa told me a long time ago. I say to myself, "Now look at here, God. I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to move it around. I'm going to do the best I know how to do today. And I hope I don't get me into anything you can't get us out of." Amen. Come on. It ain't no more complicated than that, folks. Yeah, well, they'll try to make you think that this is a thinking program. Nope. You can't think your way into right living. You got to live your way into right thinking. It's not about thought process. Therapy teaches you to think. Takes you right back into the problem on a daily basis. Then when they get you hooked, they'll say, "Take these. That'll help you out of your depression I just put you in." Alcoholics Anonymous is about living out there in the world. Alcoholics Anonymous is about finding some zest for living that you want to talk about it to people. The book says carry this message to the alcoholic who still says, what message are they talking about? The message in this book says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. That's the message here. Message I used to drink, I drunk, wet my pants, and I don't do that no more. Come on. Something has had to happen to me. Something has happened to me. Very profound has happened to me. It's happened to me. It will happen to anybody who will accumulate these first 9 steps in the program to the best of their ability in their life. Then you got to spend the rest of your life trying to give it away because you can't keep it. Guy asked me the other day, how many guys you sponsor? I said, 1 too few. I don't know how many. I don't keep track of them. I don't know how many of them got drunk today. If I get sober, if I take credit for the ones that are sober, don't I get credit for the ones that are drinking? How do you get that going on in here? See, this is an ego-deflating situation. What I was like and what happened to me, what I'm trying to be today, had nothing to do with me whatsoever. Left to my own devices, I'd have been dead at 10 years old. But you came into my life, the people of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you told me about the second paragraph in the 3rd step of our book. It says I have to concede to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic. Concede means I got to give up the battle. Can't fight it no more. Book says I cease to fight anything or anybody. I got a great life. I really do. I got a couple children that have never seen me drink. I got 4 grandchildren who've never seen me drink. I've got 5 great-grandchildren who've never seen me drink. And yet they know that their daddy and their grandfather and their great-grandfather goes to Alcoholics Anonymous. I've always been a busy person in Alcoholics Anonymous. When my youngest daughter, who just had her 50th birthday, one day she was little and I was getting ready to go to a Sunday morning meeting and getting dressed. And I was trying to go out the door and she met me at the door, my little Jackie, and she said to me, "Daddy, where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to a AA breakfast meeting over here in the Valley, honey." And she spun on her heel. She said, "Daddy, it's my birthday." I thought, oh, God. What kind of a selfish jackass are you, Johnny? Jesus, your child, your baby daughter, you're in this AA thing. But I'd already made the commitment to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sure the people made the commitment to come and see me in 1959. So I turned to get in my car, and my little girl showed up at the door. She said, "Just a minute, Daddy." And she ran down the steps, and she jumped up, threw her arms around me, and gave me a big old kiss. She said, "When you get to Alcoholics Anonymous, Daddy, will you do something for me?" And I said, "If I can, honey, I'd do anything for you. Why?" She said, "Will you thank the people of Alcoholics Anonymous for my daddy?" See, if it had been people like you take time out of your busy lives to come and see people like me, I wouldn't be here. That little girl would never be here. So I thank you for my little girl, Daddy. I thank you for every living thing I have. I thank you for every living thing I'm ever going to have. And I'm just going to tell you that it's a long, long walk from a cell in solitary confinement at a maximum security penitentiary to where I stand right now. But for the grace of God, AA, and good people like you, I could have missed it all. Thank you very much.